Hey there, friends. Welcome to Child of the Redwoods Live,
Hello.
where two former public school teachers who chose to homeschool their own children share their views on education, on parenting, Montessori, life, and love. I'm Aubrey.
I'm David. So whether you homeschool full-time or not, we are so happy to have you here because we believe that education is a journey you take with your children, and the opportunities for learning start over every day. And speaking of starting over, we had to start this broadcast over a few times. We were having some technical difficulties. So thank you for being patient out there. We are so happy to be here.
Yeah. So thank you, and come on in. If you're watching live with us, feel free to comment in the comments. And this will be recorded as a podcast.
Of course, always. Watch that replay. Well, anyway, we are excited to be here today. We just, Aubrey shared with me a couple of days ago a really interesting article, a parenting article in NPR. About special time. And basically, this is the idea that if you set aside just 5 minutes a day, you will get your kids to comply. They'll listen better. So only 5 minutes to good, obedient children. It was what a miracle. So we have some thoughts on this. I think pretty sure we have some thoughts on this. So no, for sure. We definitely want to go through this. But first, some updates.
Sure. So let's see where we are in the business. So for first thing is in our primary course, we just wrapped up our 8-week intensive. So actually this morning, I gave the very last live coaching session for primary for our fall session. It was really, really fun. I feel like it is always bittersweet this time of year. I always get tears in my eyes in the last day of class. I still do. I've taught the same class for years now. Yeah. And I still get teary on that last day. And I'll tell you, I always did when I was a kindergarten teacher as well. There's just something about the end of something that just makes you a little nostalgic. And
for sure.
I know the next session I'll be full of all the unreasonable excitement again. But right now I just feel like, oh, my heart is full. And I'm also just so proud of the journey that these members have taken, the ones that really made it through the whole 8 weeks. It's
totally
not an easy thing to do, to learn the Montessori method and really apply yourself to learning it in every single subject area for 8 weeks at a time.
That's right.
But that is what they signed up for. And I know that a lot of them made it to the very end.
Yep.
So it's something that's really pretty cool.
Yeah. I trying to remember how many course starts you've had. So it's thousands of people have been through the program over the years. Another couple, 200-300 this time for fall.
I can't remember. Something 11 course starts.
Yeah, so a lot of folks and all over the world. It's always cool. So this is just the live, of course. And it's fun. And if you missed out on that fun, don't feel sad. You can actually join for the spring primary enrollment now over at childoftheredwoods.com. So that live intensive will be in March, April. But if you sign up now, you get immediate access, lifetime access to the core Keep Teaching content, which we actually recently just expanded. So a lot of great stuff in there. And also the community, get right into the community and start collaborating with some of those alumni and folks. We have a lot of guys, a lot of folks, parents from all over the world again in our community, dedicated specifically to homeschooling in a Montessori aligned way. So if you would like to have some fun and learn how to bring Montessori to life for your 2.5 to 6-ish, almost 6-year-old, then join us for primary. And if you have a 6 to 9-year-old, we also have a lower elementary course that'll be starting enrollment in January. So we have to wait on that one.
Yep.
Now, in terms of what you don't have to pay for, because I'll say for a fact, I know that I personally have never spent more money on groceries and gasoline than I have in the last week, like in my entire life. And it's not, I don't feel like we're buying more gold bullion. No, it's like, it's amazing. It's incredible out there. You look at the data on inflation, it's really quite miserable. And we're all feeling that out there. So hearts out to all of us who are going through this period of economic pain. And if you're looking for some free resources, we are definitely happy to provide those too, including to our YouTube lives
Mhm.
and our podcast. We also have a website we've been updating quite a bit. So we've got new articles about the 10 different academic areas that are addressed in the first and second plane, or specifically the primary and the lower elementary years. We've got articles about homeschooling. We've got some new information about Maria's life and how it relates to homeschooling. We just published a new article about how to do assessments, what traditional assessment gets wrong, and how to do it better. Plus, we have free courses and a bunch of free printables and all kinds of stuff. And so you're feeling that inflation pinch, but you still want to enrich that learning, come on over. We've got great stuff. And if you do want to go to the next step, you can join us. We've Constellation is always open, and we'll be enrolling for primary now and lower L very soon. So love to have you there, and just come check out the website if you have thoughts on that. We'd love to hear it at hello@childoftheredwoods.com.
I will also say on the topic of affordability that this doesn't go for all Montessori schools. There are public Montessori schools out there, but the typical private school cost of tuition per year in the United States is like about $10,000,
Yeah.
right? So just think, we offer the entire Montessori curriculum just for $247 for primary. Like,
Yeah.
it is a huge savings over private school if you decide to homeschool your kids and use the Montessori approach at home in a do-it-yourself way. It is so possible to take a scrappy approach at home
Totally.
and save a lot of money that way. So,
Yeah, or Constellation, it's $347 a year, and that includes the full back catalog. So every issue that we published since January 2021 as themes, which are filled with printables. So lots of printed home, DIY friendly. You subscribe, plus you get all the live coaching, 2 new events every month, plus the catalog, plus the community in a private classroom. So to kind of keep you going. So it's actually a pretty cost effective way. If you're looking to do Montessori for anyone from 2.5 to 9, Constellation is a great way to do it. And if you're looking to do Montessori and you want to really start at those fundamentals, that's what we have those the primary and the lower L class for. So it's actually, for $350 for lower L and $350 a year for Constellation, it's $600 or $700, and that would be a lifetime access to the foundational course,
yeah,
and then all the back catalog, and you can print all of that out. So
it's a lot of content.
it's a lot of
Yeah.
content. It'll definitely last you for years, and we'd love to have you there.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about our own homeschooling. I love this part where we get to kind of give little insights into what we're doing with our own kids. So in the past week has been kind of an unusual homeschooling week for us. Our kids have been on a camping trip by themselves with their forest school, but without us. And
Yeah.
I will tell you, this came with a lot of mixed feelings. I miss them a lot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it felt very
Yeah.
strange to not have them in the car. And in fact, on our way back after we got them and headed back home, there was just constant chatter in the car like
Yeah.
in a million different directions. And none of it was really about their camping trip. They were just asking all kinds of inane questions, and there was silliness. And David and I realized how quiet the car had been while they were gone. And it just, I know it was weird. Well, it just made me think about the progression of developing independence away from you. When our kids were very little, we didn't really, they weren't away from us hardly ever. We really took an approach to parenting, and not everybody can or wants to, but we really took that kind of attachment type of approach to parenting, where they stayed very close to us. They didn't have a lot of babysitters. It was just very, very family at home most of the time. They didn't even really attend classes
That's right.
outside of the home until they were towards elementary age.
Yep.
So for the most part, they had a very secure, I feel like they had a lot of security kind of built during those years. And when we were ready to kind of let them fly free away from our direct supervision, it kind of feels a little scary.
Yeah.
And it did back then. And it's still, I'm telling you, because it still does feel a little bit scary now. Like, who knows what could happen to them while we're away. David and I were just reminiscing about how we both remember going to camp as a kid, as older kids, and that experience away from being away from our families, and how it felt kind of strange for us too. And our kids, when they came back, of course, David and I just wanted to know every single little detail.
Oh
We had
yeah.
been wondering, what are they doing right now? What are they doing right now?
And maybe you've got
Um,
a little one who's in a day school or a preschool, or they're at a program, part-time program, where they spend time with grandma or something like that. And they come home and you quiz them immediately. What did you do? What did you do today?
yeah.
Did you do something fun? And yeah, that instinct is definitely there. And, definitely when the kids got from this camping trip, we picked them up from the camping trip. We were like, what did you do? How did you spend your time? Did anybody get hurt?
I know
Did
we
you
were
have
really
fun?
trying hard not to do it because we
That's
knew
right.
that we're not supposed
That's right,
to,
because
right?
that's the other side of that. You need to give those kids, whether they're 3 or 13 or whatever, time to process. And some kids will want to process orally, just like I want to tell you everything about it. A lot of kids won't. They'll need to sort of stew on it a little bit, and then
Mhm.
in a quieter time, come back after they've had a chance to sort their memories and kind of let
Yeah,
the
it
emotion go
depends on your
down.
personality of your
Definitely.
child, but also just depends on how they're feeling that day, whether they're too tired.
That's right.
With the little ones, sometimes they just give their all while they're there. And
Yeah.
I think our big ones too. They just give every ounce of energy that they've got just to attend the program or to be at school or to, be at somebody's house and on their best behavior
That's
while
right.
you're not there. And then when they're finally back in your embrace, they often don't treat you with the kind of kindness that you expect or the respect that you had thought, right? They often come back kind of angsty and maybe in bad moods. With little ones, it comes across in like they might
A tantrum,
tantrum or have a
right?
meltdown immediately.
Crying and
I know it's so many kids. Like they exit the school building away from their teacher. And I used to watch this happen as a kindergarten teacher. I would be like, this kid had a fantastic day. But as soon as she would look up and see daddy, her face would melt and the tears would come. And the mom or dad would always come and look at me and be like, oh, what happened today? And I'd be like, it was a great day. I don't know. It was such a great, she was so happy all day.
that's right.
And it was so hard to convey the truth of that when they saw their child just racked with tears or sobbing or just, but that is the emotional release that comes after your child has separated from you and they've given all this energy to this other experience.
Yep.
You're the safe one that they come home to and the
Yep.
safe one to release their emotions to. So if you can just remember, this is emotional processing, and everyone needs some time to process from big experiences, and we do too.
Absolutely
When
right.
we have big
That's right.
experiences, we also need process time. Sometimes it looks like binging on Netflix time, or like for you, maybe playing your game on your computer,
Something,
right?
yeah.
Or reading a book or, audiobook or whatever you do to decompress. For me, sometimes it's watercoloring because I find it very soothing. I just do that for an hour and just
Or going,
process.
if you're working, kind of sort of a numbness to it, like you might be at the office or at your job, whatever you're doing, and you kind of approach it with a little bit of a zombie-like attitude. I know that I've been there before too, and it's just that emotional processing, which I think this underscores. In the past, if you think about how the way we thought about children was like this: children were silent, and then they were little adults. And then at some point, we decided that children were really special and in their own thing. But neither one of those is really quite true. Uh, uh, Children are like little adults in some sense, and they are their own things because they're going through these developmental stages. And this is a great example of that. So I am a huge fan of Disneyland. We live here in the Bay Area in San Francisco, and when we moved here, I was like, "Oh, we're going to go to Disneyland," and we've been a bunch. But every time we go, on the way back, we always drive. It's about 7 hours, and as you're sitting in that car going through the Central Valley, it is kind of gets depressing. You're sort of lonely. And it's not because you're like sad. You just had fun, or I had fun at least. We all had fun. But now the fun is over. And so you're emotionally processing that. You also experience that around like after a Christmas or a birthday, some
Yeah.
kind of
Or when our
big,
parents come into town
oh,
because they don't
right.
live nearby and we see them
Mom
and then
comes to visit and then she
they go
leaves and
and
you feel flat.
yeah.
Or even in this case, our boys, we've lived with them for quite a while now. And when they went off to camp, you would think like, hey, it's free time, but actually we were really lonely. Like, this house is too big and quiet. And it's certainly not very big, but it felt huge. And you feel that emptiness. That's an adult version of processing a high or a low. And kids do it too. They just don't have the emotional maturity because of the developmental stage to express it in the same way.
Right.
And don't take it as like a failure. I think that's the big one, is that we parents can sometimes take that as a failure. Like, why won't they talk to me? What am I doing wrong? Why are they so sad? They must have had a terrible day. Why is the teacher not telling me? And it's not necessarily the case. It's just they're just a smaller version of an adult in some regards. And in that way, they're having to process those emotions. Give them that space.
Yeah. So there's several ways we can actually help our children process these events in their lives, or just excitement or new things that are going on for them. I know that it is our instinct to ask them, what did you do? Exactly what happened. And I don't think that I think you might run across some websites, some points of view that says like it's wrong. You should never ask these questions. Always let them process first. And that's probably good advice, but I've never been able to 100% follow it myself. So I'm going to go on the record and say you can ask your kids whatever you want to ask them anytime.
Right.
Like, anytime that you're showing that you love them is totally 100% fine. But you should not expect that they might want to talk at that moment. There are lots of ways to let them process. One of the ways that we like to let our kids process is to just, on the car ride home, just like be chill and quiet. Yep. And not pressure. Try not to pressure them. Put on some music, or maybe talk about other things, that aren't related to the experience. So
that's right.
We tend to use that one. We also come home and we encourage them to not just go right onto their devices. Instead, we ask them to do something kind of calming, like take a shower, or, something that's kind of physical that involves their body, but that's restful, read a book, or just lounge on the couch. Or, we might actually, not to say that we won't use screens at all. We might actually sit on the couch together and watch something together. But the point is, it's not necessarily time to separate from the kids. It's a time when we want to focus on bringing ourselves together with them, but without pressure. So right. I think we often do choose to just hang out together in a relaxed way. We might even go out to dinner, just kind of relax out and about, but not exercising or anything intense. We might sit on the couch and watch a movie together, just low-key type of stuff. And when we had littles, it often just involved playing with their toys. So they would come home
from whatever they were doing and go into their room and just play
together. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, no child is going to respond in the exact same way. I think the trick is really to find what works for you and your child, whatever makes you guys feel the best. And then to know that information about what happened is probably going to come out. I mean, it's no doubt going to come out later on. You just know, you don't know when they'll be ready to share that information, but probably not right away. So anyway, so that's that little talk. And I think that really swings us into this article that we are talking about with special time, because that is one technique that people use in order to connect more deeply with their children.
Totally.
And we happened to read this article, David said, on NPR. As he said, I found it. It is titled The 5-Minute Daily Playtime Ritual That Can Get Your Kids to Listen Better. So kind of interesting. So I'm going to pull that on my screen so that we can do a little story time with you guys today. If you don't have a copy of it yourself.
Definitely. You can go find a copy online, or you can listen to it.
You can listen to it.
It is NPR.
It's NPR.
The R is radio, right? Although I suppose it should be a P for podcast at this point. There's how many of these parenting articles can they write? It seems like it's an infinite number.
Right.
Yet another. And why do they keep writing them? Because we keep wanting to read them. We want a fix. We want something that solves our problem. And I'm just going to say from the outright, it's not going to happen. Parenting is really, really hard. Aubrey a minute ago was talking about how the kids, they didn't really go all big overnight trips and things for a long time. That was a point of contention for us. She felt very differently. I wanted them to be a little bit more out of my hair every now and
Yeah.
again. And then Aubrey did. And so parenting is a journey. It's hard. You do, especially when you're doing it with your partner, and you don't always see eye to eye, even if you eyes on the same goal at the
Mhm.
end. The way you're getting there can change. Plus, those kids are their own beings. They're going to go through these many, many complex stages of development. The child at 3 is not the same as the child at 6, is not the same as the child at 9. It's like they're different people almost as they move through life. And how you learn to deal with them has to also change. And it's both sad because you miss the thing that's gone. Like, I miss the 3-year-old version of you, but you're also really excited because the
Yeah.
6-year-old is so exciting and wonderful, and you love to see what they're becoming. It's a really, really hard journey. All that is to say, there is no 5-minute fix.
Yeah.
We can read all the books we want. We can, study all the things. There's no simple path, but there are things that we can do. And it is an intentional mindset. If we can have a positive, affirmative, intentional mindset about how we work with, how we treat each other, and including our children, it can make a big difference. And so it can't just be that 5 minute, it has to be a lifestyle. And so what's interesting about this article is that I think they're getting the big picture kind of right. Like, the things that we'll talk about here are to the point, but the big caveat right at the outset is anything that says 5 minutes can get your kids to listen better
Mhm.
is it's not realistic. You should
Right.
you should read that in the same way that you read, like, doing setups for 5 minutes a day will turn
I
you
know. I
into
was thinking 5
5 minute
minutes.
abs, right?
5 minutes to getting less belly fat. Or
Yeah, one
right.
weird trick to
Yes.
eliminate your whatever
Yeah.
double
So
chin. It doesn't work, right? We love a quick fix, we want it, but it isn't there. But but if you peel back, you can find truth.
yes. Okay. So if you're here live with us, we would also love to hear your thoughts. So the way this is going to work this time, so feel free to pop in with a question in the chat or anything that you hear that really resonates to you. We would love to read that as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start. I'm just going to read some excerpts from this. We'll just go ahead and read the whole thing because it's not really that long, and then we'll just pause and kind of talk about
Yeah,
our thoughts. And then if you have thoughts too, we would love to hear your thoughts as well.
totally.
Okay. So it goes like this: the 5-minute daily playtime ritual that can get your kids to listen better. Starts like this: do you remember what it was like to be a kid? So much of the day was directed by adults. Wake up, get dressed, brush your teeth, eat your breakfast, get in the car, go to school. Sometimes kids listen to the instructions and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, that can be very frustrating for parents. Pause here. It absolutely can be frustrating for
That's
parents.
right.
Yeah, like sometimes, I do look back at my own childhood and think, my parents really did try to give me a very self-directed childhood. I had those hippie kind of parents, and I'm so grateful for it. But there's a lot of truth to that. Like there were times when I had to be driven to school. I like actually had to get out the door and,
That's
and
right.
do it. And there's only so many peach pits that you can have under your bed, because you've been sneak eating at night before your parents are like, kid, you like gotta you gotta clean up. Right?
That's
You just
right.
got to do it. So, we can't give our kids total autonomy, and they don't know better enough to know that a
Totally.
collection of peach pits next to your bed is going to invite all the rodents into your house. Like they're not thinking about all of that kind of stuff. As adults, we are. So it is our job to help guide our children in the way that will work best
That's
for
right.
our family and for them.
Yeah, here's one that never seems to go away. Get in or get out of the car.
Mhm.
When they're babies, you can just put them in the car. They
I
might
know.
scream
Yeah.
and make your
And
drive
resist. Do you
and
remember the
resist.
you
Yes,
remember the back going
yes, I'm
up?
not getting in my car. Yes, that doesn't end. It doesn't seem to end. They just do it in different. They're just late or tardy or
Yeah.
resistant in different ways. It's tough. We want those in. You're looking at the clock. You're saying we got to be at this class or whatever by in X number of minutes, and we've got to get across town to be there. And why don't you have your shoes
And
on?
somebody always has to poop.
There's always some kind of disaster of,
I know.
like, can't we just leave, please? And it's true no matter what their
Yeah.
age is. At this age, it's like, I forgot to brush my teeth, or I forgot
Right.
to wash my glasses, or where are my socks? I don't know, the same place they weren't yesterday, I guess.
Right.
You can't help it.
So yes, so those frustration feeling for us as parents is real.
Very
It's
real.
gonna happen.
It doesn't
It's
stop.
The other thing that's real is they're going to be, they're going, no matter how child led you are, there are going to be things that you ask your child to do throughout the day that they don't understand why it's
or
important
want
to
to
do
do, or
them.
fight you tooth and
That's right.
nail.
That's right.
Like, it could be something that they ultimately even love. Like kids, they love going to the gymnastics class,
Yeah, or
but
playing park day,
going
or
out to to go to the
whatever.
playground or visiting grandma or whatever. But the transitions are just really, really hard.
So the article
So,
goes on. It says,
hmm,
we ask a question here. This question I think is super important. It says, so given that it's so frustrating for parents, so how can parents get their kids to be more apt to comply? It might sound counterintuitive, but one strategy widely recommended by children's health professionals is to engage your child in short daily sessions of child play.
child-led play. That's right.
Child-led play. Yes. So first of all, I get a red flag here when I read this question. You and I talked about it a little bit earlier, but every time I read these words, like the little red flag pops up, and it's because I've heard this question so many times, and there's no one solid 5-minute solution that ever works for this kind of question. The problem I'm having is the phrase, how can parents or I get their kids or my kid to blank? How can you get kids to blank? Now, whatever it is, no matter when, whatever the end of that question is, how do I get my kids to eat healthy food? How do
Take a
I
bath.
get my kids to take a bath? How
Get
do I
in the
get them to brush
car.
their teeth?
Brush
How
your
do I
teeth.
get them to do their homework? Or how do I get them to go to bed?
Stop pulling their sister's hair.
Right. And we could just go on and on and on with how do I get them to. And that seems to be kind of where we start with, right? We get frustrated. Our kid's doing something that really makes us angry or frustrated. How do I get them to stop doing that? Whether it is it's hitting or it's pulling hair or it's not getting in the car, whatever it is, we want to know how to get them to do that thing. And what we're really asking is, how do I like force them to do that thing, right?
I have an expectation of them complying with something.
Right.
And that expectation may be completely reasonable and realistic. We need to
be.
be at this place by this time, or you miss it. And you can't hold up the family. It's rude. You must do it. That's a perfectly reasonable reason to expect someone to comply. It doesn't change the fact that you are asking somebody else, in this case, a child, to comply. And it's not there's no 5-minute fix, right?
No, there's not. Now, people will say that there are, but I will tell you that most of those 5-minute fixes involve manipulation or coercion. They involve coercion on one level or another.
I'll buy you an ice cream.
Right. So you can
I'm going to spank your bottom.
You can bribe them, you can punish them, you can threaten them. And I guarantee you'll get compliance if you do those things. Okay. However, in Montessori, especially, we know that those are not the kinds of methods that we want to use in order to get compliance from our kids.
That's right.
So what do we do instead? I think it really helps to change the question, first of all, as a Montessorian. So instead, anytime you hear yourself in your mind saying, how do I get my kid to blank? Try changing the question, because often we get to a better solution, a non-manipulative solution, when we ask a better question. So let's see. So let's just brainstorm some questions. We could ask, instead of how can I get my kid to take a bath, we might say, how can I make bath time more comfortable or enticing for my child?
Yeah.
And so then we might be thinking of different solutions, right? We might think, hey, maybe they need some new toys, or hey, maybe this is the wrong time to take a bath. Maybe we try it in the morning, first thing, instead of at night, at the end of the day.
That's right.
It might go better. And so now we're into solution thinking rather than thinking about how do I make them do this thing that's not working.
Which underscores the big, the big challenge that I had with this article, which is that it doesn't invoke the child. It limits the child's voice in the relationship to this 5-minute segment. And really, it needs to be the cornerstone of your relationship. So again, we're going to be clear that there are limits, parameters that you will set. As a parent, you have obligations and duties and things. The child must take a bath, or the child must go to the school, or the child has to do whatever, right? He needs to eat dinner and not go hungry or only eat candy, right? There's all kinds of things we as parents have to enforce because we're the parents and we know better. But we should never start with, I've decided this is the commandment from on high, child will comply.
Mhm.
When we hit resistance, we need to evaluate what is the source of that resistance. Is it the time? Is it the
Mhm.
bathwater is cold? Is it that the mouthfeel is weird? Is
Yeah,
it
is it like it is a sensory issue or
And from there, then you can start to build a solution. Like, why can't you get your shoes on fast enough? Oh, well, it's because you misplaced your shoes. All right, now I have a solution. I need to have a rule about where shoes go. Or, oh, you can't find your socks, and that's why you can't get out. Or you get your shoe on, but then it's always untied, and we always have to stop. Why is that? Oh, you haven't quite figured out how to tie your shoe fast
Mhm.
enough. Maybe we need Velcro shoes.
Right.
So you find alternatives to solve to the real problem, which is not, I want you to get out the door, which is what happens when you have a compliance mindset, but I want to make it to the class. I want you to be healthy. I want you to be clean. I want you to have fun. I want you to whatever. And then from that point of view, starting with the intentional point of view, digging into it to interrogate what exactly might be causing the block. Again, very, very clear. At some point, you just have to lay down the law. I'm not going
Mhm.
to say you don't. It is definitely the case, but we shouldn't start with the presumption that the child will not comply or that the child's non-compliance is born of, resistance, wickedness, whatever,
Disobedient,
disobedience,
yeah.
bad children, spare
Mhm.
the rod, spoil the child, that kind of thing. Like we have to start from a different point of view.
A different mindset.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So I think so from the get-go, I just think we have to be careful with how we are phrasing, even to ourselves, the problem that is going on. It's always really good to start with the problem. Okay, I am getting frustrated because, and I feel this way. And so let's really dig into what is going on here and try and describe what the problem is. So I guess my first problem with this article is they're saying, they're trying to draw a line between here's kids are really frustrating. How do I get my kid to do
X.
do something, do what I want them to do, right? How do I get them to obey me, really, is what it's asking, right? And their answer is you should engage your child in short daily sessions of child-led play.
So let's pause real quick here because I want to be fair. I think that the rhetorical device that the writer is using is just a rhetorical device, and
Correct.
it is, trading in tropes, and then you as a parent can relate to like the frustration of not feeling compliant, and the solution that they're offering is not a bad one,
No.
because if you were to boil it down to the essence, it is, you should listen to your children, you should be engaged with your children in an authentic way. That's exactly what we just said. Like, what exactly is your intent? Why are you trying, what is the compliance trying to point to? Listening and trying to come up with the solution, it's implicit to sort of what they're providing. So in fairness, the solution that they're offering isn't wrong, it's just misleading.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in context with the introduction. So, child-led play is great. We love it in
Absolutely.
Montessori. Yeah. And engaging your child in short or long daily sessions of child-led play is exactly what you should be doing anyway, regardless of any obedience or non-obedience issues, right? It's just healthy for children. And I think another thing that is overall really solid about this article's point of view is that children, when you are engaging in play with your children, you are building a relationship with them, and
That's
that
right.
is so healthy and so important. And when you think about human nature, when you have a relationship with someone, you are more likely to find compromises with them. Like if your relationship is positive, right, and like you really
You
love
want it to
you
work,
love each other,
right?
you are going to make the effort, to try and compromise and find solutions together. And I
That's
think that
right.
that's true. Contrast that to the stranger who is in a confrontation with you at the grocery store, or while standing in line somewhere, tempers flaring, road rage, that sort of thing. You have zero relationship with that person. There's zero motivation in order to solve that problem. You just want to get out of there. Right.
That's
And
right.
you don't necessarily feel beholden to doing something to go out of your way to do more kindness when somebody is kind of being ragey at you. So with children, we want to develop our relationship and really nurture that. And the way children do that is by playing with you. It's one of the primary ways that they develop a relationship with each other. And I would also say that it was the primary way that we developed a relationship with each other, even
as adults.
as adults, is finding ways to play together, whether play means watching movies together or taking walks together.
Yeah, it's another way of saying common interest, right?
Yeah, common interest, spending time together. That's right. Really, yeah. And for children,
a relationship.
Yeah, for children that would be play. Yeah. So, so it's called special time. You want to read this little section here?
Yeah. So they say it's called special time. It was developed in the 70s by a psychologist named Sheila Iberg, and it is, quote, special time increases opportunities for closeness between a parent and child. As that attachment is building, it increases the likelihood that a child is going to listen or value what a parent has to say. And that is right.
It is. And also it should work in the reverse, right?
Absolutely.
So it should also increase your likelihood to want to listen or value what your child has to say as well.
So this is another example of where it's right that I would say Sheila Iberg develop something, but this is not a concept that is from the 1970s. This is a concept that you'll find throughout Maria Montessori's work and plenty of others. This idea that when we collaborate with our children, we build better bonds. It's the idea of a child-centric or a learner-centric approach. And this particular application of it is completely valid. The challenge is, as it says in the next part, for at least 5 minutes a day, sit down with your child and join them in an activity. That includes drawing, playing with dolls, building blocks, anything that doesn't have a right or wrong way to play, like a video game. Don't ask questions or give commands. This is your child's time to be in charge. That's all great. The problem is the quantitative element of it, trying to say that if you do this for this one little trick, this 5 minutes a day, and you will get better compliance. That's just setting an unrealistic expectation. In fact, we need to invert it. Your mindset needs to be first and foremost that you're going to be involved with your child's life, including drawing and playing with dolls and other things with them, mealtime, getting out the door, bath time. These should be shared experiences to whatever extent is reasonable. And through that, you will build strong bonds, and it makes it easier when you do have to force compliance. You have to leave now. I'm going to pull from my well of goodwill, but that well is pretty deep because we have a really good, loving relationship. And that's not something that you can confine to 5 minutes a day. It has to be the cornerstone of your relationship. That is, I think, the juxt of the challenge for me.
Yeah, I also would like to push back a little bit. This says this includes drawing, playing with dolls, building blocks, anything that doesn't have a right or wrong way to play, like video games. So I'd like to push back a little bit on this. I think that most video games are actually appropriate for elementary age children.
And this article does talk about 7 and under. So
it does.
Probably a little too young for what we would consider most video game play, But
what I'd like to push back on is the idea that screen time can't be a bonding experience between the two of you. True. Yeah, because in our experience, at least as parents, playing, especially if there's a video game your child really loves, or an app, even an app on the iPad that your child under the age of 7 really loves to play, that can be a form of engagement and bonding, that you two could share. Or even a TV show, like if your child loves Cocomelon or whatever, you like sitting down and doing something that your child really wants to do, and like snuggling and maybe pausing every now and then to talk about the characters and just like letting your child lead the conversation. I would say that also counts, for what they're kind of considering this special attachment bonding time.
Yeah, I think
I wouldn't personally exclude it.
Yeah, I wonder if they meant more like competitive environments where it's sort of an absolute right or wrong or something. But it is all about that affirmative intention.
I wouldn't be playing with those games with children under the age of 7 as a Montessori in any way.
Yeah, for sure. But it is totally your intention. I just told you earlier, I love Disneyland and I watch all those cartoons and stuff. And it's just the thing that I've always loved. And I don't mind watching those with the kids. But not every parent loves it. But if they do, and you're doing it together, that's great. If you're just plugging them in, like go to your room and watch 10 hours of Disney Plus, that's another issue altogether. And the issue isn't with the media, it's with the use of the media. Just like if you don't engage with your children except for 5 minutes a day.
Yep. I also would say reading stories is another great
Oh,
period of
totally.
bonding time, and that they would not include in this special time that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so they kind of have a prescriptive way about talking about this way of interacting with your children during this special 5 minutes. So first of all, the research does support that the fact that children are more compliant if they are given short periods of attention giving and
Sure.
child-led
Because they
play.
feel invested in the
Yeah.
relationship just as you do as an adult.
So, for example, this says, according to a 2017 review of literature, parent child interaction therapy, which includes special time, has long been regarded as an effective intervention for a myriad of emotional and behavioral difficulties since it was developed in the 1970s. Plus, it's boosting attention spans and social skills in children. And we are not going to argue with that evidence. That
No.
sounds great to us, and it totally makes sense that if you're developing your relationship
A
again,
healthy,
spending
positive, loving relationship
is
will result in a healthy, loving relationship in all of its ways.
that's
So,
right.
no question there. As classroom teachers, you even see this, and this is
Yes.
always a surprise. Well, not a surprise to a professional teacher, but I actually heard this come out just in our play group the other day. Some
Mhm.
of the parents were talking about, school is so boring, but then when it's really exciting, you get engaged. Like, oh yeah, and I was like, of course, every good teacher knows that good discipline starts with great curriculum. When you
Yep.
have an engaging class, good curriculum, kids involved with the learning process, they don't rebel, they don't fight you in the same way. You always will have some trouble because that's just the way of the world,
Totally.
but it's going to greatly reduce your problem. And that is true in the classroom as much as it is anywhere else. And it's just exactly what Aubrey said. You know, she and I, of course, we can disagree. We can even fight sometimes, but we're committed together. We have a shared vision. We love each other. Same for our children and our family and our friends. We're in the tribe together. We're together in a group. And when we feel stress from somebody who's not part of that in group, that's when you can put up your hackles or whatever, like
Mhm.
get away, you're in danger, 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 right? So this is a totally natural thing. Why should we be surprised that it works with children as well? When we include the children and they have a sense of ownership within the family
Mhm.
or the classroom or the in group, then they're more likely to comply when required. They trust you and they trust that the things you're asking them to do make sense. Now, that is all good. The challenge again is trying to make this boil this down into a formula. If you just do this for 5 minutes a day, 4 days a week, they say, and then eventually they say every day, then you'll get these results. And if you follow this acronym, they call it PRIDE, PRIDE, then it's the secret of success. Again, good intention, but setting a really unrealistic expectation and totally inverting it. This should be the cornerstone of your relationship, not the special 5 minute rule.
Right. Right.
Like the
I mean, I have no doubt that if you spent 5 minutes a day with your child, it would be better than spending
zero,
no minutes
totally.
a day with your child,
Yeah.
right?
Like if
And
you're
it
not doing this at all,
certainly would improve your
5 minutes is better.
relationship to just spend at least 5 minutes a day with your
5 minutes
child.
of sit-ups will be better than 0 minutes of
Oh yeah,
sit-ups,
that's
but
proven
it's
too.
not going to make your abs of steel come alive.
That is true as
It just
well.
doesn't work. It's not how life works.
Yes. So I think that it can be calming for parents who work outside of the home who don't have actually a lot of time to spend with their child
And we
when they
feel
come
guilty
home.
about that
Yeah. So,
and frustrated,
you experienced that a lot when you were working outside the home and we had little kids.
totally.
Sometimes they were even going to bed or in bed by the time you got home.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Did you ever think of it as like I got to spend my 5 minutes? How did you feel about it?
No, I felt like I really did feel like when I was home, it needed to be quality time with my children.
Mhm.
First and foremost, the time I spent with my children, with the boys, came above anything else,
It
really,
did.
even our relationship.
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home parent at the time, so I was with them all day. So 5 minutes was like a microscopic amount out of my schedule with them, in terms of child-led playtime. But I do remember that, as desperate as I was for attention and adult communication, when David came home, the kids came first.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's just the way it was
And it
for several years.
continues in a lot of ways even to now.
Yeah.
Although at this age, the boys are in the third plane, so they're at a really, they're teenagers or almost teenagers, and so their needs are different, and the way that they want to interact is different. But it's still first and foremost our whole philosophy of life is centered around family, and I think that is kind of the essence. So if you're going to take this 5-minute rule and the PRIDE formula that they describe as a starting point, then great. Like if a 5-minute ab gets you to go to the gym, super. But if you expect too much from it, it's not going to work, because at the end of the day, it's about your mindset. What is your intent? And that's the intentional part. Is
Mhm.
your intention to get compliance,
Mhm.
or is your intention to build a healthy, loving relationship with your children that will help them become healthy, productive people in society? If that is your intention, then you need to live your life according to that. You need to structure your life around that. And if it starts with 5 minutes, it starts with 5 minutes, but that has to be where your mind is at.
Okay, so in this article, let's explain the acronym PRIDE. And so I'm just going to read a little bit more. It says, keep these directives in mind as you play with your child. And David and I agree with some of them and disagree with others. And we'll tell you. All right, so P is for praise. Give your child specific praise as you play together. For example, rather than saying good job, because kids hear that all day long, say, I love the way you stack those blocks up high.
Well, and so the good on this is absolutely you should give specific praise. When you give generic praise, it is very empty. Kids know that it's kind of malarkey, as a certain high-ranking official might say. It is, you see through that stuff. Yeah, it's empty, right? It's empty praise. Specific praise is good, but
Well, we usually call it descriptive praise. And it's not supposed to be about how we feel about their
exactly.
work.
The
Our
problem isn't that it's descriptive; it's that it is egocentric.
egocentric, yeah. Yeah. It's parent-centered language. So I don't know. So if I were to rephrase this, where the author says, I love the way you stack those blocks up high, I would say that might be getting a little bit manipulative. You're trying to actually you're starting to direct their work rather than letting them totally lead. So I totally think that, you could describe what you see. You say, I see that you stack those blocks up really high. Wow, was that hard? And engage them in a genuine conversation, and show, that you are, I think it's okay to show that you're impressed with something.
Yeah.
But I think that
Yeah, I
we
mean,
should
it's
be
not
really,
to say, "Oh, wow, that's cool," isn't wrong. Like,
no,
don't censor
no,
yourself
I mean, we say, wow, that's cool
a
a
lot,
lot.
but it's about the intent. What is your
Yeah.
purpose? Is it just to say like, "Oh, that's great, go off and do your thing," or is it like, "Oh, wow, I'm genuinely impressed. That's really cool. Let me try," because that's going to come in a minute under
Mhm.
I imitate, which is, oh, instead of "I love the way you stack those blocks high," you might say, "Oh, that's cool. Let me try," and then you might try and make a stack, or you might do something different, and now you're engaging with them in play while giving them praise. You're going to that next level. You're giving them something specific, like, oh, it's cool the way it goes red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, right? Maybe they alternated the brick colors, and then you maybe create something yourself that alternates in a different way. This is constructive work together that is includes the sense of praise and a descriptive praise.
Yeah, so anytime you see the word praise, I think we need to really be kind of cautious of it, because this is a way that we can change our children's behavior. It is fact that when somebody is given praise, it does make them feel differently, and sometimes it can just make you feel good and prideful yourself, or sometimes it can go the wrong way, and it can make you feel like, wait a minute, I didn't think I did a good job on that. Like, you're judging my work, or like, I didn't do this for you. I'm doing this because it's fun, right?
That's
So
right.
I just think it's important that when we give praise, we make sure that it's given in a way that doesn't sound like it's all about us and our preferences, and make it make sure that our comments are more about celebrating them.
Yeah.
And and also, with good job tends to just be, we do tend to say that a lot to kids, so they are right, they do hear that all day. And anywhere you go, like when we would go to the library and they would tell the kids good job, my kids would go up and stand in line for their drink at the water fountain, and or somebody would say, oh, good job, you
You really knew how to drink that water.
It really got under my skin as an educator and as a parent.
Because really what you're saying is good job, you weren't a bad boy.
Right, basically. Yeah. Good job.
Good job for being compliant.
You followed the rule. You obeyed, right?
Whether you knew what the rule was for or anything else, you did it.
Right.
You were
you
mindlessly followed my orders.
I feel like I am not opposed at all to celebrating children. So when they seem proud of their work or they want to show me something, I'm going to show interest in it, and then describe it. Like, oh, look, yeah, red, blue, you made a pattern. And I will just share that joy with them or point something out that I find interesting about it.
That's right.
But I don't have to put a judgment on it. I can let the child show me what judgment they're putting on it, or, engage in a conversation about it. And it's just so much better. It works so much better that way.
Yeah. Teaching them to articulate their own praise helps them grow self-confidence and vocabulary. So that's kind of your goal, right? So praise, P for pride. P in pride. P for pride is praise.
So the R in pride is reflect. And this one, I think, kind of confused me just a little bit. It says, as your child plays, verbally repeat back of some of what they say. So, for example, if they say, and it crashes, I'm going to say, and it crashes. The repetition shows your child that you understand them and that you're listening. I'm assuming that this is for really little toddlers.
I'm thinking too, right.
And they say, focus especially on talk you'd like to hear more of. For example, if they say, I'm reading a book, you might say, you're reading a book. I feel like this is probably something about language that parents do instinctively.
I agree.
That
I've definitely heard us use
totally. But when it's put in kind of this prescriptive form, like I read it and I think it sounds really
weird, right?
Kind of creepy.
That's right.
It sounds a little creepy. Can you imagine if I did that to you intentionally?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be fun.
It wouldn't be fun.
It's not fun.
It's not fun, no.
I mean, I think what they're really getting at here is that you're listening. I think that's the key piece. I mean, L isn't a letter that appears in the word pride. Maybe it could have been plied, but so maybe that's the problem, is that it's reflect. But I really think the word here is listening, that you're engaging with the child and you're listening to what they're saying and you're picking up on that and you're coming back at them with key pieces that let them know. It's minimal verbal communication, as we adults would say. Like when we have a conversation with somebody, we're looking for minimal verbal cues back, like exactly, like right?
Yeah,
it's a way to
women do more than men.
They do,
but a lot more than men.
And which isn't a good thing that men are the silent type, right? Because it's good for bonding. It's a good way to show like we're in tune with each other. We're listening. Men do it in other ways. We use a lot of nonverbal cues and things, but you're
true.
teaching that,
when
right?
You're with a toddler, and they say, I see a train. You do often say, oh, I see a train too, to kind of have that conversation with them on their level.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but it totally it sounds creepy when I read it out loud, but when I actually go back and think about what it's like to talk to a little toddler, it makes total sense.
And I would say it's not just reflect, it would be reflect and add. So I see a train too. Wow, look, it's got 4 giant wheels in the back. Wow, I wonder how big a train could get. So going through this process, even if they're very little and they can't really verbally respond, they're listening and they're learning, and you're teaching them how to converse and show real empathy for another person, which is kind of what we're getting at here, right?
Totally. Yeah. So I is for imitate, as you talked about a little bit earlier. Their instructions for this one is that you should join your child in parallel play.
And this will depend on the age of the child.
For example, parallel play is where your child, so children do this mostly when they're toddlers. Before they're like 3 years old, they're mostly engaging in what we call parallel play. And it's basically when the two of you are playing in the same kind of way. and you're playing next to each other.
Yeah,
So
two
I don't
kids
know.
in the
You don't even,
sandbox with a shovel, but they're not doing anything
actually
together.
collaborating on the sand
They're just
play.
digging
They're
holes.
both digging holes at the same time. And parallel play can also happen with different toys at the same time. So you have siblings, they come into the same room, they both choose different toys to play with, they sit down on the floor together, they're both doing their own thing, but like next to each other. So
Yeah, one's digging, one's
that's
playing with the
parallel
truck,
play.
but it's right.
So the instruction here is join your child in parallel play. If they are stacking Legos, you stack Legos. If they are making dots on paper with a crayon, you make dots on a paper with a crayon. And it says this shows your child that you're playing with them, which they might not understand if you seem to be doing something completely different, I guess.
What do you think about this? I'm kind of mixed.
Well,
I mean, I think it's good, and I think we naturally do it.
I think it's something that we already do. If we're going to, if you're going to sit down and play with your kid, like, and they're going to play with the Legos, I think you would naturally go sit down and play with the Legos with them. They're just kind of putting it down into words, just like with reflect, and kind of repeating after them. So you're sitting down, you're stacking Legos together. This is so. The word that they chose to do it, I, is for imitate. I think is another one of those things that sounds a little creepy, right away. So like I'm watching what they do. They stack a Lego, then I stack a Lego, then they, get a doll and I get a doll. Like that kind of starts to feel a little prescriptive to me.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
unnatural. Like I remember I was reminiscing when I read this because you played Legos with the kids constantly, and I kind of let you take the Lego lead on that, so I didn't tend to play a lot with our Duplos or Legos, while I was home with the kids. I kind of did other things, like other Montessori lessons. But when they came home, that was one of the things that you did with them a lot.
We had these, I don't remember the Legos so much as the Haba blocks.
The Duplos.
The blocks is the thing I really remember. We had these great.
What do you mean by Haba?
Isn't that what you call those wooden blocks?
No, those are unit blocks.
They were great. We had a whole bunch of kinds of wooden blocks.
Yeah.
And some were like this shape, and then some were different shapes. Use your imagination. What shape can a block be? And I would come home from work, and sometimes without even getting undressed yet from my, my work clothes, I just I kind of sit down on the ground, and we would stack blocks, and we would kind of work together, and they would want to stack them, and then I would sort of stack them in a different way. So like maybe they would put they would put two like this, and then maybe I would take one and like this and this. All right. Mm-hmm. This is not a mystery. You've all done this if you've ever played with your children.
Totally.
Right. So is this imitation?
I don't know.
Kinda. I mean, I'm imitating the play in a sense. They're playing with blocks or Duplos or whatever.
You're letting them lead. You're not orchestrating the play by saying, "Hey, kids, now let's make a house."
Exactly. Now we must make the tallest structure, right? But you may not use any of these square blocks.
No. So you're kind of. I remember doing this with coloring with them too. So I remember you doing that a lot with our Duplos and our train set and our Legos, which our boys loved. But I remember doing it myself often with like artwork. So my kid would sit down. Maybe you have a 3-year-old who's not really drawing houses or trees yet. You don't sit down and you're like, okay, I drew a house and a tree and a sun and like all these things. And what did you draw? Some scribbles, right? So no, we would sit down.
That's a very nice scribble phrase.
Right? Let me imitate you. But no, we would sit down and we would like scribble together. They would be making kind of circles, and I would make circles on my paper too. So, I mean, I think ultimately I agree with this one.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's just like the others. The concept is correct, but I think it is when you try and boil it down just to imitation. Really what you're saying is sit down and get involved with whatever your kids are doing.
Yeah. And don't try to teach them a lesson at that time. Like you're just playing, right?
Yeah, and I think that is the key here, right? Mm-hmm. Although as Montessorians, we would say that the distinction between work and play for a child does not exist,
right?
Which is kind of the key here. But for you as the parent, don't try and prescribe. Don't come and say, no more of these block plays. Now let's do this puzzle. It's better for your brain, right? If they're engaged with the blocks, you sit down and you play with the blocks, and maybe you imitate, maybe you collaborate, maybe you do your own thing. And then they're like, I want to do that too. So now I've made the T, and then they make a T. And we're like, I wonder if I can do this. And you're not directing them. You're just sort of parallel playing. You're inspiring them through your actions. And this is engagement. That shows to them that you're paying attention. It's better than just repeating back the words to them. It is showing through your action and your time that you're engaged. And 5 minutes is okay, I guess. More would be better.
What I learned from your play with our kids is that you weren't afraid to be creative too. It wasn't like you were directing their play, but you might actually make things with the Duplos or the Legos or the blocks yourself that that were representational. So maybe you would make a house, but you weren't like trying to direct the kids in what to make together or what they had to do. It was just more like they were stacking their blocks on their level, or lining them all up in a little row. And what you would do is you'd be like, oh, I'm just kind of bored sitting here putting mine in a line. I'm going to make a little house. And so then you would make a thing, or you would see how tall you could stack up your blocks.
Totally.
And I remember the kids would kind of come over and see what Dad was doing, and kind of watch you for a little while, observe, and then they'd go back to what they were doing. And our children both did a lot of self-talk during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember watching you because I was either nursing on the couch or I was just like sitting there watching while they had their time together, because you'd come home from work or it was on a weekend, and I had a lot of time with them during the week. And so I knew that this was special time for them to have just with Dad. And so I'd be watching, and it would be fascinating for me to be observing. But what I didn't remember observing was a lot of talking going along, but not from you to them. I don't remember you instructing them a lot. I remember you guys playing kind of side by side, and you would always be kind of creative because what adult is interested in only stacking, right? You would kind of find ways to engage your brain.
Education is a journey we take together.
Right. And our child would be over here, like maybe he would be making the blocks into a train, right? So he would be like, he really loved trains too. So he'd be playing with the blocks, and he would decide, I'm going to line these blocks up and make it into a train and start to do some pretend play. And so he would be talking to himself, choo choo, here it goes. Oh, I got to get another one. Here comes another car. And he'd get another block and he'd put it on there and he'd go, choo choo. Oh, here it's coming. Here it's coming. Oh, Daddy, here it's coming. Daddy, do you see it? Here's coming. Daddy, do you see it? Daddy, look, here it's coming. And you would stop whatever you were doing and you would lean over and you'd say, oh, there's a train. The train is coming. Oh, you know what? That train is going to need a tunnel. I bet it needs a tunnel. It does it? And our child would say, yeah, it needs a tunnel. Here it's coming. Yeah. And then you would quickly make one, and then you would help them like do the thing, get the train into the tunnel. And it was just this really sweet kind of collaborative, parallel and also collaborative type of play that was going on. It was just precious. And I loved watching it. And it didn't seem, you at the time had zero technical training in that age group, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You were a teacher of high school students.
Yeah,
and so
I didn't have any
when we
real
had babies, I had been working with toddlers and preschoolers and kindergarten and lower elementary age kids for years and years, right? And so I had all these conceptions about how one is supposed to play or give lessons and all. And what I loved was watching that you came in to play with our kids, and it was just felt so normal and natural and easy.
Well, that is what Montessori kind of was getting at, right? I think in a way what she was describing is what happens naturally, and how, when we are aware of what happens naturally with the learning process and we follow those natural tendencies, we get the best results. Which is kind of the challenge of having something like a 5-minute routine and a PRIDE model, because it systematizes something that's very natural. Like you sit, you're playing, you're giving praise. Hopefully it's specific or descriptive. You're imitating and innovating together. It's called quality time. I think you could just say, how do you get your kids to be more compliant? Spend quality time and involve them in your life. But that doesn't turn into an acronym. Okay, so we have two more. We got to go quickly. I know we're late. So D is describe. This is Narrate what your child is doing as though you're a sportscaster calling a game. And remember, sportscasters don't coach the game, they describe what they're seeing. So when you're sitting, go ahead and describe their activity. For example, you just put an orange block on top of your tall tower. And again, this demonstrates your interest in their actions. And, again, what it boils down to is engagement with the child.
I don't have a problem with sportscasting, except
it is a classic educational tool.
Except when we overdo it. Yeah. I think that parents are sometimes told that they have to narrate every single thing that their child does during their play. And what Montessori would tell us is that we're distracting the child during that time. So if your child is concentrating, follow the Montessori principle of don't interrupt them unless they're wanting to have engagement time with you.
And they may tell you to be quiet.
They might.
Actually, that's an okay thing.
Yeah. So you don't need to be, I think that it's great to describe sometimes, but you don't have to overdo it or make that part of your play every single time.
That's right.
And then E is for enthusiasm. And it says, show enthusiasm while playing with your child by smiling, clapping, or using your words to express that you're having a good time. So if you see they completed a puzzle or dressed up their doll, you might say, wow, you dressed your doll in such bright colors. I had so much fun picking this outfit out with you. And give them a high five. And then they end with, they say, what matters is that you're authentically communicating verbally and non-verbally to your child that you're interested and excited to be with them. Now, I agree with this as long as it's authentic.
Yeah, goes to that
if you're showing enthusiasm and you don't actually feel enthusiasm and it feels fake, they are really highly sensitive creatures. I think they know when you're kind of being fake with them. So, if you are immersed in their play, if you are taking the opportunity to be playful and joyful with your child, this enthusiasm is going to come anyway. You're going to find it fun. And so I think it's great to show enthusiasm whenever you're playing with your child. You don't have to show it at specific times or make sure you're including it or anything.
Absolutely.
Do you have other thoughts on that? I mean, I think that part, again, just kind of came naturally to us.
Well, I think it comes to all parents who are really in tune with their children. You can't boil this down. Yeah. Saying it's a 5-minute rule and you can follow the PRIDE method is something you can describe or you could write down in a book or something like that. But really, I want to emphasize that it's a mindset. That what we're really talking about is be engaged with your children, involve them in the life of the family, problem solve when you come into roadblocks, know that you will at some point have to enforce rules and laws that they won't get, but it's just your obligation as a parent. But that shouldn't be your go-to expectation. Your go-to expectation should be that my child is trying to learn to be a human being on this earth, and I want them to be the best human being on the earth they can be, with the best life that they can live. And to do that, I need them to have confidence. I need them to be educated and aware. I need them to be compassionate and lead with love. I need them to respect others and themselves. And the only way to teach that is to actually go out and model it and live that life. You can't tell them to be good and then use negative reinforcement and punishments, or you're going to send them a mixed message and they might comply and be miserable, or they might rebel. If you want them to be good, healthy members of society, then you need to teach them how to be smart, good consumers of the world around them. And that is your ultimate responsibility. And in this case, the 5-minute rule is more than for some period of time every day, sit and play with your children and play with them on their terms and really show that you respect and love them. And not just when they do the thing that you ask them to, but because you love them. You're their dad or mom.
Yeah. It is true that you'll see behavior improvement if you spend time with your kids. And if you've been too busy and not really in tune with them, and you see that they're being very disruptive and that their behavior is whacked, then I think that it's a great it's a great reminder to slow down and connect with your child again, and it really does balance things out. When David and I are feeling a little snippy with each other, that's what we do too. We go and we lay down and we cuddle and we talk, or we go and take a hike and like connect and bond with each other again. And then our relationship starts feeling better again. It's the same thing with our children.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it is a strategy you can use,
So
and there's a lot of good in it.
Totally. So listen, find this article. It's out there. Read it, but keep in mind, like for me, it's just the inversion is correct. It's not the 5 minutes a day. It should be the focus of your relationship. And if you need to start with 5 minutes, that's fine, but that's not the expectation. Like reorient your life in a way that makes this a part of your being. And that is what it really means to take that journey with your children. And honestly, it's so much fun. What a great way. What a great way to live.
It is fun. All right. Thank you, friends.
You guys have a great
us.
day.
Yep.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.